So let's dive into some supplements. I was going to make this presentation super short and just make it about fat loss supplements, which would basically mean I'd be talking for like 2 minutes because there's really nothing out there that's going to enhance your fat loss to any great extent. There might be small changes in thermic effect from certain things, but it's just going to be so small that it's not actually worth putting money into, and you're better putting all your focus into your nutrition and your activity. But if we look at performance and fat loss together, there might be some things to chat a little bit more about. So let's jump straight in. Are they actually necessary? Supplements for performance and fat loss are the least important part of your nutritional plan. So that's why we're covering this thing so far down the track, because it's just not something you need to worry about. You shouldn't be focused on supplements. You should be focused on your nutrition. You should be focusing on the things that are going to help you adhere to your daily intake. You should be focused on daily movement and your training. Those are going to give you the big results. And I know it's boring, and I know it's not exciting, it's not sexy. That's just the reality of it. And the sooner you kind of come to the conclusion that supplements are largely marketing, the better you're going to be off long term. The vast majority of supplements on the market don't do anything except burn a large hole in your wallet. So just be aware of that. Just because something looks fancy, just because it's citing some research, doesn't mean it's going to be efficacious for you. However, there are a select few that may be worth supplementing for strength, endurance, muscle gain, and fat loss. So we're going to start with protein powder. I don't really consider it as a supplement. I just consider it as a convenient food option, because the reality is it's a protein just like any other protein we would get: rice protein, pea protein, hemp protein, soy protein. But it's packaged and processed in a way that makes it really convenient option to get really high protein at a decent cost as well. So do we actually need it? It really is goal dependent, depending on your macronutrients that you have available. For example, a sedentary person is not likely going to need to supplement with any kind of protein powder just because they don't need a huge amount of protein from the get-go. On the other hand, an individual in a fat loss phase may use protein powders when calories are extremely low. So just be aware of that. This is a great time if you're on a fat loss phase right now to start implementing some protein powders to help you get the protein up without ingesting a whole bunch of extra calories from the protein sources that do likely come with carbohydrates and fats as well. If you look at legumes, for example, yeah, great protein source, but it comes along with a lot of carbohydrates. So you have to be aware of, in a plant-based diet, that protein doesn't just come as protein, and it does come with extra calories as well. So when we look at protein powders, easier way to get higher protein, 25 grams or to 30 grams of protein in some protein powders per serving with very little carbohydrates and very little fat. So it's a convenient way to get your protein up. Convenient and cost-effective method to reach higher protein intakes. So just some considerations for protein powders. Generally, I'd suggest people look for blends. For example, a pea and a rice blend, or there's a whole bunch of other blends out there as well. But generally, the ones I go for is a pea and rice blend. 70% pea and 30% rice protein is generally a great one to go for. And that basically just has a much better amino acid profile than a lot of the other blends, or whether it was just a pure pea protein or it was a peanut protein or whatever it may be. Generally, the blends have a little bit better on the amino acid side of things and will help us to get this leucine content of 2.5 to 3.5 grams per serving, which is going to be optimal for muscle protein synthesis. So be aware of fancy marketing and overpriced products. And just quickly here, you can see the leucine content of whey protein per 100 grams, or 2.6 grams per 30 gram serve, or around a generic serve of whey protein. You get about 2.6 grams of leucine. And then this here is a pea and rice protein blend, getting about 3.4 grams of leucine per 40 gram serve, which is generally what you'd be getting in a lot of these blends is a 40 gram serve of protein. So you're really hitting that peak intake of leucine for maximizing muscle protein synthesis and getting the best response from your training. So that's why I would look for a blend as opposed to one that's just a pure pea protein or hemp or soy or whatever else. So that's protein powder. Grab it, take it, make your life easy. Creatine monohydrate. And generally when we hear creatine, or maybe not us, but a lot of other people, what they think of is this right here. Somebody injecting steroids, right? And really, creatine is very, very far from a steroid. Creatine monohydrate specifically is the most proven version of creatine, and it's one of the most well-studied supplements in the world. And there's a whole host of benefits which we're going to cover here. Greater effect in vegans due to lower baseline muscle creatine levels. So we don't consume any of the animal products that have high creatine, beef, salmon, things like this. So we have lower baseline levels, which does mean that when we take creatine, there's a greater response. Creatine monohydrate is the only proven form. So the biggest benefit of creatine is in short, high-intensity exercise with short recovery. For example, lifting in the gym, sprinting, things like this, where it's a short period of time of hard work and then recovery. There are also some benefits for endurance athletes as well. So just be aware of that. If you are an endurance athlete, doesn't mean don't take creatine. And then other benefits as well, we're looking at a significant increase in memory and intelligence, less decline in performance after sleep deprivation. And there's some massive benefits for the elderly as well, such as reducing sarcopenia and increasing their anabolic response to resistance training, so they can maintain muscle tissue and strength. So there's a whole host of benefits. I'm not going to go super in depth in terms of the performance benefits of them, but generically or generally, it's increased strength within the gym, it's increased recovery times, increased hypertrophy, reduced exhaustion, time to exhaustion in endurance exercise. So there's a whole host of benefits from creatine, and there's just like thousands of studies on it. So just take it. It's super easy. Best consumed after exercise, so you can just mix it in with your protein shake, but at the same time, whatever time of day it is easiest for you to get it in. For myself, it's just trying to remember to do it each day. So trying to put it in my protein shake each day just helps me to remember to take it. And you'll take around 0.1 grams per kilo of body weight per day, or roughly about 2 to 5 grams per day. If you're someone who's on the heavier side, 100 kilo male or female, you might want to be taking 10 grams of creatine per day. Someone who's a lot lighter, 50 kilograms, maybe 5 grams per day. So just go off body weight. It's probably a lot easier to do it by. So I myself at 80 kilograms, I will take around 8 grams per day. And that's as simple as you need to do. You don't have to do any loading phases or anything like that. Just take creatine daily and consistently. And that's probably the biggest supplement, the supplement that has the biggest performance benefits for it. The second one that has the big benefit is caffeine, right? So these are the two that I suggest taking if you want to improve performance in the gym or outside, if you're doing endurance or team sports or whatever it may be. These two are the big two. So caffeine is not just about that morning buzz. It has the effects of reducing reaction time, increasing muscle fiber contraction, improves decision making, increases strength, improves endurance, reduces RPE, so reduces the felt effects of a set or of a exercise bout, so how hard it was. And it possibly reduces appetite. And anecdotally, for me, it definitely does. I use caffeine in fat loss phases throughout the day as a way to mitigate hunger. So I'll have, for example, a sugar-free energy drink as a snack instead of what I would usually go for, like a peanut butter sandwich or something like that, right? So using that as a nice way to keep your calories down and mitigate hunger. And there is some research to support that as well. And the same thing for stimulating lipolysis, which is just the mobilization of body fat. There is some evidence to show that does occur from caffeine supplementation as well. Whether you actually burn that body fat off or not, though, is going to come down to whether you're in the calorie deficit or not. So just taking caffeine isn't going to help you lose fat. You have to be in that calorie deficit, but it may enhance the process a little bit, right? Just be aware, though, that caffeine does have a half-life, right? So if you're taking caffeine at 12 p.m. at midday, there is going to be half the amount of that caffeine still in your system 4 to 6 hours later. So if you're taking 200 milligrams at midday, there's still 100 milligrams in your system at 4 p.m. and potentially 6 p.m. And then again, and further on in the evening, there's going to be half of 100 again. So it's going to be 50 milligrams. So it comes down and down and down, but it does take a while. So just be aware of that when it comes to sleep disruption. You shouldn't be consuming caffeine after 3 or 4 p.m. definitely. Tolerance can inhibit performance-enhancing effect for some exercise modalities. Not so much in the gym. You generally see benefits from caffeine, whether you have built up a tolerance to it or not. But for some endurance exercise, it seems to be that the performance enhancing effect can be inhibited slightly if we build up a tolerance. So just be aware of how much you're consuming and potentially taking breaks or taking low caffeine periods in order to have the most effect from the caffeine when you actually use it. And then to suppress tiredness, as opposed to just improving performance, if you just want a little pick-me-up to suppress tiredness when you're in a fat loss phase, calories are low, and you want to, keep yourself going throughout the day, then low doses of 1 to 3 milligrams per kilo is probably the way to go. So if you're 80 kilograms, that's just 80 milligrams of caffeine, which is about the amount in like a small can of Red Bull. Or one shot of coffee. Just a small amount of caffeine to suppress tiredness. And then aim to keep your caffeine intake as low as possible in order to get stimulatory effects when it is truly needed. So if you're just smashing caffeine all day long, 4 cups of coffee, a pre-workout, an energy drink, the effects of that caffeine when you go to use it for performance is going to be inhibited slightly, right? So if you can keep your caffeine, your sort of habitual caffeine intake low throughout the day, it might just be like one coffee a day, and that's your limit. And then you might have a pre-workout or a caffeine tablet before your workouts. That's probably going to be okay. But if you're smashing coffees all day long and then expecting to get a benefit from your normal pre-workout before training, that might not be the case. So just be aware of that as well. So when you take it 30 to 45 minutes before your first hard set in the gym, or before your first sprint of your sprinter, or quarter of game if you're a team athlete or whatever it may be, make sure you're taking it beforehand, not like as you're training. And I see that quite often as people will get to the gym and then they start taking their pre-workout. It's like, no, you should be having that pre-workout as you go to the gym, or your caffeine tablet or whatever. And just a quick side tangent on that. When we look at a lot of the pre-workouts, generally the 90% of the benefit of the pre-workout is from the caffeine within that pre-workout. So just be aware of that. If you want to save some money, just go and get a caffeine tablet. I myself like to drink the pre-workout because I like the taste as well. And I like to sip on something as a bit of a routine before I start training. But you can get the same benefit from an energy drink or a caffeine tablet if you want to save some money. So, a lot of the extra ingredients within pre-workouts are more of a chronic effect as opposed to an acute effect. The caffeine is the one that gives you the acute response that's going to enhance your training within that particular session. And we're going to take 3 to 5 milligrams per kilo before training. So that's a fair amount of caffeine, probably a lot more than you'd be used to. So I would say assess tolerance by starting at around 2 milligrams per kilo. So if we're an 80 kilogram individual, we're looking at 160 milligrams of caffeine to start. See how that affects you. Does it give you enough to enhance your performance in the gym, or to reduce tiredness, or whatever you're taking it for? And you can scale that upwards if you need to, but I'd just be aware of these super high doses. If you are working towards this is probably, probably if you're watching this, it might not be you, but if you are like an elite level athlete working towards a competition day, then you might be looking at taking that higher end, the 5 milligrams per kilo on competition day to really enhance performance benefits. Okay, so lastly here, I did want to cover off on branched chain amino acids, or essential amino acids, and it's a bit of a cautionary note. It often comes up in discussion when we're looking at supplements is, should I take BCAAs? Are they worth it? What's the benefit? And I wanted to cover them quickly just to enlighten you a little bit. So BCAAs are your leucine, isoleucine, and valine, which are your branched chain amino acids, very important amino acids, specifically leucine, as we've already talked about. So the theory goes, let's ingest more of those and enhance muscle protein synthesis more, to enhance recovery and performance, and of course muscle growth. So the reasons you would potentially use branched chain amino acids is potentially used to bump up low protein meals. So for some reason, if you're traveling around the world, or you're just in an area of the world where you're not going to be able to get a lot of protein in those meals, you might be able to have a branched chain amino acid supplement and just sip on that with a meal to enhance the muscle protein synthesis response from that meal. But in all likelihood, that's not going to be a situation. So I wouldn't really worry about it. I just thought I'd put it in there. May be useful for intermittent fasting. So if you're someone who is implementing intermittent fasting to help you reduce your calorie intake per day, then hey, you might go, look, I'm going to start eating at 1 p.m., but I'm training at 6 a.m. So between 6 a.m. and 1, I'm going to have 2 servings of branched chain amino acids just to support the muscle protein synthesis response from that training session. That is an option, but be aware that, branched chain amino acids, they still have calories in them. They're not calorie free because amino acids do equal calories. So being aware of that doesn't mean that the fast is no longer a fast. The whole point of you doing the fast in the first place is to reduce calorie consumption for that 24-hour period. So it could be useful, but I just also don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's going to make the biggest difference. Now, why we're being cautionary about branched chain amino acids. There's no real use for them if total protein is adequate. So, sorry, that should say no use if total protein is adequate, not adequate. Anyways, there's no real use for them, right? If your protein intake is sufficient, which it should be by now, considering you've done the rest of this course and you've understood calories and macronutrients and starting to implement those into your diet, your protein should be sorted. There's no need to ingest branched chain amino acids if your protein is adequate. And even if your protein wasn't adequate, I would say that instead of focusing on having a branched chain amino acid, just have a protein shake instead. That's going to get you far closer to your goals than the branched chain amino acid would. So could you not just drink a protein shake? It's cheaper. You're going to get all of the amino acids within that protein shake as opposed to just the 3 from branched chains. So the reality is it's just much a better option to take a protein shake. And like I just said, they only provide the 3 amino acids. So potentially essential amino acids that contain the 9 essentials would be more efficacious, but at the same time, again, a protein shake is cheaper and probably a better option for you. And then also just being aware of marketing. It's very easy to get caught up in these supplements that want you to buy their stuff and using different studies and data to support that. But at the same time, I'd just be aware of that marketing. And also being aware of where they are sourced. Amino acids, oftentimes in the past, most amino acids have been sourced from animal products, like I believe it's animal hair and hooves and things like this. So just be aware of that. If you are vegan and ethical vegan and you want to avoid that, then of course you're making sure that you know where those branched chains are actually coming from. So the take home here is if you're consuming a diet adequate in carbohydrates, protein, and total calories, you're unlikely to get any I can't even see what the word is, I guess, meaningful benefit from supplemental branched chain amino acids, especially if you are hoping they will improve resistance training performance. So I think that conclusively states the lowdown on branched chain amino acids. Supplements can be useful, but not all are worth your time or your money. Stick with the basics and do the work. And that basically just means, look, the supplements are exactly that, a supplement. They're not going to do everything for you. You do have to still adhere to your diet. You have to ensure that you are in that calorie deficit. You have to ensure you get your steps in. And you have to do the training, because the training is the biggest component of if we want to change that body composition. Supplementing with creatine, supplementing with caffeine are probably the 2 big ones to look at, and of course having your protein powder on hand for convenience options. But hopefully that breaks down supplements for you. Don't go wasting your money on things that don't have enough research to support them, and focus on the basics.